Hey friends, I am literally trapped inside because the air in Philly is unbreathable right now. Thank you, Canada. And I want to talk about movies. It's been a while since I talked about movies, and I miss it. We like to debate whether or not a movie is good or bad, and we try to sentence it to a certain fate in a binary fashion of this movie is valuable and worth our time, and this movie is a hunk of junk and should be discarded, scrapped from public memory. But with the state of attack that the arts are in, particularly feature-length films, I don't know. I've gotten to the point where if a movie can gift me a moment, maybe a scene, a beat, even just a line, or a particular musical score, if it can gift me something that stays with me years after I've seen it, honestly, that is the most I want out of a movie watching experience these days. So what I want to do is talk about moments that have always stuck with me for movies. That doesn't mean I'm talking about movies that are some of my favorites, that I think are great films necessarily. In fact, the first movie I want to talk about is a film that I admit freely is pretty flawed. So the Candyman reboot, right, from Monkey Paw, Jordan Peele studio. This movie had a lot of hype. It was a reboot of an acclaimed property that had not seen the glory days in many, many years. Now, I'm really nostalgic about this movie because it is one of the first films I saw in theaters after the pandemic. And with all the hype, with all the anticipation, with how much I loved that original movie, I was just as excited to see it as anyone. Now, while I did think it was a worthy addition to the franchise, I mean, that's not saying much given the films that came before it. Yeah, I was definitely disappointed by the time the end credits rolled because there were serious flaws with the film's pacing, with its structure, even with some of the additions and changes to the Candyman mythology felt a little convoluted, and overall it just didn't come together quite as well as I would have hoped. But man, there's this one scene that has always stuck with me. And it's funny because it is the big exposition scene, technically. It's where we get the backstory of Candyman from Burke, played by Coleman Domingo, who is at this point in the film kind of serving as the Dr. Loomis-y figure who is explaining to our protagonist the history, the lore, and the threat of the Candyman legend. This isn't a scene where anybody dies. Candyman himself does not appear. It's not one of the more staged or kind of dynamically filmed scenes in the movie. It's really just two characters talking with a really inventive idea to portray these flashbacks through shadow puppetry, which I remember when that was in the trailers, and that hooked me more than anything. But it's about how this scene comes together, and I think about how it articulates the themes of the film so perfectly. In a movie that I thought was a little convoluted and muddled with its lore, with its messaging, this is where the film perfectly articulates itself. If you're like me and you refer to the summer of 2020 as the George Floyd protests and not the George Floyd riots, then I think this scene will resonate with you for the same reasons.
He's real.
Doubtless real. Samuel, Sherman, Daniel Robitaille, they're all real. Candyman is how we deal with the fact that these things happened. That they're still happening.
And this is where I really took notice of Coleman Domingo. Now he's an Oscar-nominated actor. He is in all these franchise movies. But for a while, he was that guy who really stole the show in Candyman. He lent this movie some sauce when it desperately needed it because it sorely lacked the presence of Tony Todd. And while this scene isn't a substitute for that or anything, it just really gave the movie weight. I felt the same kind of importance, the same grand moral power that was conveyed in the original Candyman, which has so much to say about pressing social, political issues. But at least this version, for all of its flaws, has given me something that is kind of a go-to scene for me when I'm thinking back to this franchise and when I'm thinking back to the character of Candyman. And yes, this scene is unfortunately really undermined by the twist regarding Coleman Domingo's character in the third act. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. That was an unfortunate miscalculation in many regards. And the worst thing to me is that it retroactively kind of weakens this scene. It weakens the bond that's forming between these two characters. But as a standalone scene, as a standalone retelling of the Candyman legend and all of the real tragedies that have gone on to be Trojan horsed inside of that legend, then I will always thank Candyman 2021 for giving me this scene.